voice can be so loud, but I'm always above, won't never stay down. Cause I've been humble.
The next session is about taking the hard things, the heartbreak, the loss, the trauma, and turning it into testimony. The next session is wounds of wisdom, transforming pain into power. Pain into power. And guiding us through this sacred space will be three women who have lived it and are now using their story to uplift others. So, I'm going to introduce each of these ladies, and then I want you all to dig deep and give them a great round of applause. First, we have Kimberly McGlonn, a visionary, professor, and CEO of Nora by Grand Boulevard, a luxury brand rooted in sustainability and social justice. With 20 plus years of advocacy under her belt, Kimberly is proof that purpose and power can live together.
Hey everybody, hey girl. I am Kimberly McGlonn, and I come to this space really, I think, with a longer leadership around thinking about how do we solve for the things that we are all burdened by, the things that we don't talk about, by what's happening in Gaza, by what's happening in the Congo, by what's happening in North Philly. And I think that each of us is empowered through our own life experiences to figure out what we can share in advancing what is really to the benefit of us all and our shared humanity. And I found that the classroom is a space to do that for me. Corporate spaces are a space to do that for me. And entrepreneurship has been another powerful platform and pathway to aligning my time and my talent and my treasure with what it means to advance, some thinking about what is yet still possible. And so I'm really, really excited and honored that Cassandra asked me to join both of you on stage to talk about the ways in which we've leveraged things that are very challenging and that resonate with all of us to figure out how do we, move forward, always facing what is yet still possible. So, good afternoon. Hey, girl. Thank you, Casey. It's so important that we gather to share what is true. So many of us, I think it's true for all of us, we are so conditioned to not know how to find the words to communicate what is true for us and to not have the courage to let it breathe. But one thing I've learned, and I think there are others of us have learned this too, is that the wound is where the light comes in. And that's why I'm so glad that Cassandra invited us to drop into this conversation about finding the clarity, the sturdiness, to see the wound, to welcome the light. So I want to just pause for a second and leave some space for us to process that and to hold space for it. Because it is, how many of you have shared your testimonies before in public? How many of you guys see that it could be fruitful for you to do it? I did it really recently in a book that I wrote about growing up on the north side of Milwaukee. And it's interesting how there are themes of everyone's stories. How many of you guys resonated with something that was shared? Right? I resonated with the fact that my father struggled with addiction, and his addiction didn't emerge until my mother left our family. I was 14. How many of you guys have had a parent that couldn't take care of you? And so for those of us where that's our story, we learn how to figure out how to take care of ourselves, right? And sometimes that comes in gentle ways and in quick lessons, and sometimes we find ourselves in this earth school season and need to take the same class over and over again. And there's so many things that experience for me of being on my own since I was a kid taught me about where I could look for help and how to ask for help, which is another part of this journey of healing the wound. It's the disclosure, learning to get that confidence with the disclosure, with the holding the truth and addressing the shame, not letting the shame drown you. And on the other side of that is the courage to recognize that that's what we share as humans. We share a sense of loneliness, of confusion, for some of us, of sheer hunger and figuring out how do you navigate the world when you don't have anyone there. For me, that finding the light made me a better teacher. It made me a teacher who knew why it was important to show up for my kids, to go to their soccer games and their basketball games and their horrible plays and their bad music recitals. Bad. Bam. And on the other side of that, it made me a better mother. You know, there's something to be said for those of us, and that's another thing that we don't, particularly in the Black community, we don't talk about what it's like when your mom isn't able, when your mom isn't, she can't, she doesn't have it in her. And I think that the wound is healed when we recognize that there are other people who are willing to step in, right? There are other women who do have the capacity. And then it becomes a journey of faith, of making it plain to your creator what you need. And then the last part of that I've learned is the surrendering, really holding on to the fact that it's all working together for your good, that everything that hurts you has come to teach you a lesson, and that your healing is in not the going around, not the drinking, not the alcohol. It's the hard thing of the army crawling through, right? And for those of us who have learned the army crawl, even when our knees were bare and our elbows were burnt off, on the other side of that, we developed a strong core. And what that strong core gives you is the capacity to stand steady in any storm. And that is really where the blossoming happens, right? Is that idea of I recognize that I have done some army crawling. And in that army crawling, I have been given the gift of fortitude, of learning when to ask for help, of learning when to say no, and the power of resting, which is what we have to do if we're going to heal. We're going to have to learn how to rest. And so my message about thinking about the wound is in the importance, particularly of Black women, of being able to surrender to the call to sit down and be still, to be silent and to be alone. Because in that trifecta of the stillness and the silence and the solitude, we are able to let what needs to come to light surface. And what we have to trust is that the tears that will produce, it will not drown us. We will not drown. And as people who have gone through the horrors of coming across dark waters, I think we've been conditioned to be afraid of those tears, of what happens when we let that sadness surface. But we will learn in releasing the tears to surf a new wave. And then we get to the capacity point where we can actually invite other women, younger women, older women, you know, the neighbor next door, to join us in this quest of looking for the furthest shore and climbing up onto the board and chasing the next hard thing, trusting that even when we get knocked off, we'll recover. And in that next season of whatever life brings us, we'll find the way of maintaining ourselves, of our strength. And I think about that a lot in this stormy time of this moment in the world. You know, how do we survive the things that we can't speak and the things that we can't ignore? And I think so much of that is in gatherings like this, gatherings like Hey Girl, where we're able to disclose and able to find that, you know, when we do that, we grow deeper roots and we grow stronger backs. And we're able to figure out how we can offer something of ourselves that's true and needed. And so that's what I think is one of the things that we get from these wounds. So let's drop into this notion of what you wish someone would have told you about the process of the healing journey, right? The thing that you wish that someone would have said, that this is how the healing will it come, or this is how you can move closer to it. Can you talk to us a little bit, Casey, about your healing journey?
Yes, so one of the biggest things that I learned is that healing does not happen overnight.
Grief, where you go through the shock again, the denial again, the sadness again, the anger again, until you get to the acceptance, right? And I shout out to therapy, shout out to a yoga practice, shout out to spending time in nature, right? Whether it's like you put your hands in soil and you grow your own food, or you learn to prune a flower, or you find, if you haven't been to the Barnes Arboretum on St. Joe's campus, it's a gym. If you don't have a membership to places like Winterthur and on the Brandywine or Longwood Gardens or Chanticleer, there are these beautiful green spaces that are so restorative that people who cultivated these massive gardens have intentionally kept from us. And so I want to just push you into the woods. I want to push you into a rose garden. I want to push you into a grove of trees. And so I found so much healing in nature. Where have you found healing? Watching the inputs, being mindful of who you're following. We don't keeping a real, we talk about curation, that word curation, curating a really careful parameter around what you're even allowing into your ether is so important. The power of saying no is so important. Realizing, actually looking at it from another perspective, being mindful of what you're saying yes to, like recognizing you don't have to say yes to every invitation, that you have to protect your time, right? I never really understood when people said, I got to protect my energy, right? What does it mean? That idea, what does it mean to protect your energy? And I'm learning protecting your energy is like watching who you talk to, who you spend time with, watching, where you go. And I think that that's another thing that's really, really important for us as we think about how we are going to pursue healing from things that are painful. And the journaling and the writing, I grew so much from being honest about my journey in that book that I wrote. And now people say, I met some woman last week and she said, it's interesting that I know so much about you because of what you shared in your book, and you don't know that about me. But what she didn't know was that I knew myself. So there was really nothing that in telling our stories that you have to hide from. It really does bring a revolutionary sense of self-possession, of owning oneself when you really sit with your story.
But God's in control, and now it's how that I remember